Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. I teach at the University of Colorado Boulder, previously at UC Berkeley and UCLA. What I want to talk about in this video is a topic I've been asked about several times in the past few months, which is mourning in Old Norse society. Now, I'm not talking about funeral procedures, funeral rituals, how someone is buried or cremated or something like that. That seems like a different topic to me. For the most part, archaeological evidence suggests that burial was practiced in most parts of Scandinavia during the Viking Age, cremation in some areas. We often find grave goods. Frequently, graves are shaped like ships or include a ship or a boat. But that's not what I want to talk about. I have talked about one example of a possible Viking funeral or Viking / something else funeral that was witnessed by the Arabic writer Ahmad ibn Fadlan. I'll link to that in the top right corner in a card. And what I want to talk about is the reaction to people's death, the personal side of losing someone. And of course, for this, we have to rely on literature where such things would be mentioned, but we get a fairly comprehensive picture of a very human reaction to the loss of a loved one. Probably the most famous scene of mourning in Old Norse literature is in Gudrun 1 in the Poetic Edda, one of the poems that the Saga of the Volsungs is inspired by, although it doesn't use a whole lot of material from this particular poem. In this poem, Gudrun has lost her beloved husband, Sigurður, and she is unable to cry. And from the context in which this is presented, it seems like crying would be a very natural reaction, as it probably is for anyone who has lost a dear loved one. But she can't bring herself to do it. And all of these different people, relatives and servants and friends, come to her and tell her all these terrible stories about men or other family members that they've lost, as if to say, you've got it bad, but I had it bad too, to try to bring her out of her weeping. And this has always reminded me of the way that when we have lost special people, will often be approached by other people who try to contextualize it with their own miseries and say, oh, well, I had it worse. You lost so-and-so, well, I lost so-and-so who was closer to me. It's a very human scene, both for the mourner and for the people talking to the mourner. But finally, someone suggests that she pull the coverings that have been placed over Sigurdur's face away from his face and kiss him. And once she does this, her tears are able to get free, and she is able to truly mourn for Sigurdur. And by implication, crying really is something acceptable for not only women but also men. When Baldur dies, according to Snorri in the Prose Edda, everything, including the gods, was asked to cry by Hel as a condition of bringing Baldur back, and everything did cry except for Loki in disguise. This implies that, for example, Thor, the manliest of gods, was able to cry at Baldur's death. And indeed, at the moment that Baldur dies, Snorri says that that everything spontaneously did mourn as well, that they were unable to hold back their sorrow and their tears. Now, a great example that I like from the human sagas is from Egil's saga. This is translated in the Penguin volume, Sagas of Icelanders, that has a Viking ship on the front of it. It's got a great collection of sagas, actually. So look for it there if you haven't read the translation before. Look for the Old Norse in the Islands Fornrad edition, or online at heimskringla.no or snarpa.is. And in chapter 55 of the saga, Egil buries his brother Thorolf after he is killed in battle, and he recites 2 skaldic poems, including one that has these striking lines, and I'm going to read these in reconstructed medieval Norse pronunciation. Jord grur en ver verðun, vinu nær of minu. Helnáð estat hylja harm, og atum barma. I would translate this: the earth will grow back over my excellent brother near the Veen River, and I must hide my sorrow, which is a hellish pain. The use of helnáð, which could mean hellish or literally hell's pain or hellish need, is a really stirring and surprisingly open window into the emotions of a saga hero, because typically they're very stoic. And in fact, after this, after the loss, the king Egil has been serving with, the English king Athelstan, is serving a feast, a victory feast, and Egil is attending, but he refuses to drink and be merry with the other men. Instead, he sits in a corner by himself with a dark look on his face, constantly drawing his sword a little ways out of the scabbard and then putting it back in, and raising one eyebrow and then another, looking really menacing to everyone around. And it's only when the king comes over and pays him out a huge treasure in compensation for his brother's sacrifice, offering, for example, a ring straight from his own arm, that Egil will drink with the other men, apparently accepting that his brother's death and sacrifice was not in vain. So these are just a few key scenes and poems and sagas to look at. Of course, many sagas include deaths, often because of the martial nature of sagas, since people are fighting, what we really hear about are enemies' perspectives on their enemies' deaths, which is not really what we're looking for. But Gisli's saga, Egil's saga, Njál's saga, many of these great sagas do include scenes of people truly struggling to deal with the loss of people who are near and dear to them, as of course does the Balder story in the mythical material. And I think there we see that both the Aesir and Vanir above us and the humans on Midgardr react just like we do today in 2018 to the loss of a loved one. I hope if you enjoy these free videos made in beautiful places that you'll check out my Patreon, now integrated with Discord. We've got a great community going there, and my translations of Norse myths and sagas available from Hackett Publishing Company. For now, from beautiful Colorado, where it is hot as hell, I'm wishing you all the best.